Hi, this is Christina, inviting you to come and join me.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, the program that cuts through the chatter and gets you straight to the know-how you need. Today, friends, we're rolling up our sleeves for a challenge I know many of you are wrestling with: how to choose the perfect GPU for your personal deep learning and generative AI projects in 2025. You're aiming to build your ultimate AI workstation, and it can feel like a maze of fast-changing tech, too many choices, and jargon that only clouds the picture. Are you asking yourself whether you truly need that top-tier RTX Pro, or if a GeForce might be plenty for your cutting-edge generative AI ideas? That's exactly why we're here, to hand you a clear, workable roadmap for selecting an NVIDIA GPU for your own setup. Let's get into the details.
Yes, and what's remarkable is how we can make this complex choice a good deal simpler by setting down a couple of bedrock assumptions right from the start. First, our focus is entirely on NVIDIA GPUs. Now, it's not that others aren't out there, but facts are facts. NVIDIA holds a near monopoly in the AI hardware space. Their gear has broad support across essentially all major machine learning and large language model libraries. And if you check any major cloud platform, you'll find NVIDIA hardware almost everywhere. The safest bet for compatibility and performance in artificial intelligence.
All right, NVIDIA is our baseline. That adds up.
Second, and this is key, this discussion is all about GPUs you're building into, buying for, or installing in your own machine. We're talking about hardware in the same room with you, powering your local workstation. If your work is mostly in cloud setups, you're looking at a whole different set of GPUs and a very different cost structure. These two assumptions tighten our focus to your personal build, a common picture for many listening in.
That distinction is mighty important. It trims our list to what really matters. With NVIDIA as our go-to, let's look at their two main lines for personal builds: the RTX Pro, some of us remember that as the Quadro line, and the more consumer-focused GeForce line. Plenty of folks probably see the Pro line and figure, it's pricier, so it must be better. But for AI projects, is that always the case? Or are there just a few specific reasons to go for that professional tier instead of the GeForce?
That's a fine question, and it gets right to the heart of the different design philosophies at play. If we stand back and look at the big picture, these philosophies separate the professional's needs from the typical consumer's. There are really only two main reasons you'd choose an RTX Pro over a GeForce, assuming, of course, the extra cost fits your budget.
Only two? Let's have them.
First, you need an absolutely towering amount of VRAM on one GPU. Right now, your top-end GeForce cards, like the new 5090, max out around 32 gigabytes of VRAM. That's a heap, no question. But take the RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell. It offers a jaw-dropping 96 gigabytes of VRAM on a single card. Not so long ago, we were all thrilled with 8 gigabytes, and now here we are, talking nearly 100 on one board. The pace of progress is nothing short of out of this world.
96 gigabytes on a single card?
That's right.
That's a colossal leap. What kinds of projects or model sizes does that open up, the sort that were impossible on a personal machine before?
It's transformative. In deep learning, it means you can load much larger, more intricate models right into memory. For large language models, that can mean handling models with 48, 96, or even 120 billion parameters. Think of parameters as the individual bits of knowledge or connections inside the AI's brain. The more parameters, the more complex and capable the model, and the more VRAM it needs. 96 gigabytes lets you work with models that would flat out run a 32 gigabytes card out of memory.
So reason one, massive VRAM. What's the second?
The second reason to look at an RTX Pro is if you plan to run multiple GPUs in one machine. Yes, you can fit multiple GeForce cards into a system, but in tighter builds, they bring some practical headaches. GeForce GPUs often take up 3 physical slots because of their width, even though they only use 1 PCIe slot. By contrast, RTX Pro cards usually require only 2 slots, making them far more space efficient if you're packing several into a single workstation case.
Right. Okay, so it's not just about the space inside the case. But what about cooling? With all that horsepower crammed in, I'd imagine a multi-GPU rig could turn a PC into a real furnace.
You've hit on a big point for those multi-GPU builds. Cooling is indeed a major difference maker. GeForce cards like the RTX 50 series typically use what's called open air or axial fan cooling. That design recirculates warm air inside the case. Perfectly fine for a single GPU setup, it does the job swell, but not as ideal for dense multi-GPU arrangements, especially with cards lined up close together. Now, there's always some degree of thermal throttling. That's when the GPU slows itself down to keep from overheating. But with GeForce cards in a multi-GPU stack, you'll see it more often because that hot air just keeps swirling inside.
So they're basically battling each other's heat.
Exactly. RTX Pros like the A6000 use a blower-style design instead. This is a key decision in their engineering. It pushes hot air straight out the rear of the case, not back into the chassis. That's tailor-made for workstations with multiple GPUs packed in, because it keeps that warm air from making the rounds again. It greatly cuts down on thermal throttling and helps every card keep pace. Think of it like giving each engine its own exhaust pipe instead of letting the fumes fill the whole garage.
Got it. That picture makes perfect sense. So unless you're chasing colossal VRAM on one card or you're building a dense multi-GPU setup where cooling and space are top priorities, it sounds like most of us will find our best fit in the GeForce line. Which brings us to the next big question. This is the line where innovation meets accessibility. And that's where things get interesting. How's the landscape shaping up in 2025 in terms of active generations and what we ought to keep an eye on?
For 2025, you've mainly got 3 GeForce generations in play. We still have the older 30 series, built on the Ampere architecture, solid cards, still relevant. Then comes the 40 series, featuring Ada Lovelace. And now, the new 50 series with the Blackwell architecture, which is taking center stage. Each new generation brings steady boosts in speed, memory, and overall know-how, building right on the last.
So basically a clear upward climb in performance and efficiency.
That's right. We've crossed the transition point. 30 series is mostly phased out for new sales, getting harder to find fresh from the shelf. The 50 series is the one to focus on if you're buying brand new today, especially for the latest features and top performance. That said, if you're scouting used hardware or working to hit a particular budget, the 30, 40, and 50 series together make up the active lineup you'll encounter. If what you want is maximum performance and price isn't the sticking point, and 32 gigabytes of VRAM suits you, the 5090 is a first-rate choice. It'll deliver top-tier results for nearly all personal AI projects. But, like we mentioned earlier, if you need even more than 32 gigabytes on one card, or aren't planning on running multiples, then the 96 gigabytes RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell is the clear leader. Still, for most budget watchers, it pays to check all active series, new and used, because prices shift constantly with supply, demand, and new product drops.
Makes perfect sense. The market's always on the move. Now, with all these cards, the 30, 40, and 50 series, each with different speeds, CUDA cores, and memory amounts, it can feel like a sea of numbers.
Sure can.
So what's it all boil down to when we look at the specs? What are the true North Stars, the most important specs when you're choosing a GPU for deep learning and generative AI?
That's a big one. NVIDIA's shifted focus over recent years. They used to lean heavily on clock speed and CUDA core counts, but now they often highlight overall speed with the AI TOPS benchmark. Think of AI TOPS as their unified score for how a GPU handles typical AI workloads. It's more telling than just clock speeds or core numbers. A higher AI TOPS means a faster card for AI work, plain and simple.
Okay, AI TOPS for speed.
Right.
But speed isn't the whole story, is it?
Not at all, and here's the crux. In practical terms, VRAM, video RAM, is often the bigger limiter, especially for deep learning and large language models. Many times, the VRAM amount dictates the GPU you end up with, because if you don't have enough memory, even the fastest processor can't load your model efficiently, let alone run it well. Picture it like this. Your GPU's cores are the super fast brain. But if that brain lacks enough short-term memory, VRAM, to hold all the puzzle pieces of your model, it can't put them together efficiently. So VRAM is often the true bottleneck, more than raw compute muscle.
So VRAM first, then speed.
Exactly.
That may be counterintuitive for folks coming from gaming. But if you can't load the model into memory, the processing power doesn't matter. So let's get specific. How much VRAM do you really need for a personal AI workstation? Can you walk us through some solid examples? What different VRAM capacities can realistically handle in models and tasks?
Absolutely. Let's break it down. With 8 gigabytes of VRAM, you're looking at smaller, roughly 3 billion parameter models. Basic embeddings. Embeddings being the way AI represents words or data as numerical vectors. It's also fine for dipping your toes into deep learning.
I love it when you dip deeper. Okay, 8 gigabytes for starting out.
Yes. Step up to 12 gigabytes, and you can run more capable models like Qwen 14B in 4-bit mode. Now, 4-bit mode, or quantization, is a neat technique that reduces the precision of the model's internal numbers, letting it fit into much less VRAM. It's like taking a high-resolution photo and saving it in a smaller file size without losing its essence. A slick, memory-saving trick.
Right. Quantization is the ticket for fitting bigger models.
No question about it. Then there's 16 gigabytes of VRAM. I'd call this the sweet spot for many personal AI enthusiasts in 2025. With 16 gigabytes, you can get into real, substantial deep learning work. Not just basic networks, but more complex, meaningful projects. You can comfortably run models like Qwen 14B, especially using that 4-bit quantization. Opens up a lot of possibilities.
16 gigabytes sounds like where things get serious. What about more?
At 24 gigabytes, you can tackle heavier, more demanding models and even start lighter pre-tuning or fine-tuning work on existing models. A solid jump in capability. Step up to 32 gigabytes, as on a top-end GeForce like the 5090, and you're in fine shape for serious work. That capacity means you can handle maybe 20 to 33 billion parameter models, depending on mode and optimizations.
Okay, 32 gigabytes for pretty large models.
Right.
And beyond that, like the 48 gigabytes you mentioned?
Yes. 48 gigabytes of VRAM often comes from pairing two 24 gigabytes cards. Keep in mind though, you're not pooling VRAM seamlessly like the big server class cards do. It takes more management. Still, with 48 gigabytes available across cards, you can run models in the 60 to 65 billion parameter range. For large language models especially, more VRAM is always a plus. They never have enough. And they can often be split across multiple GPUs for inference work. For traditional deep learning, however, spreading VRAM across cards for training a single model typically means custom programming, which is more involved for personal setups.
That's a sharp practical breakdown of what each VRAM tier enables. Much clearer for our listeners. Now, what about NVLink? I've heard that tossed around as a way to connect multiple GPUs and pool their memory. Is that relevant for personal builds, or is that another league entirely?
Good question, and a common one. While NVLink can connect multiple GPUs to share VRAM and processing muscle, basically acting like one big memory space, it's important to note it's only on server-class GPUs. These high-ticket cards power large data centers, often with hundreds or thousands of GPUs working together. In that world, NVLink is indispensable for scaling. In a personal machine, though, you won't find it, and you won't need it. For home workstations, focus on the VRAM available per card, and if you've got multiple GPUs, think about splitting tasks between them, or using tricks like quantization to fit models on individual cards.
Got it. That clears up a big misconception for a lot of folks. So with everything we've covered, VRAM, NVIDIA lines, cooling, what truly matters, let's wrap this into concrete advice. For someone building their personal AI workstation in 2025, looking for the best bang for their buck at different budget and performance tiers, what are your GPU picks?
Sure thing. Based on the 2025 market and remembering prices are a moving target, here's the lowdown. For an entry-level setup, a used 3060 with 12 gigabytes of VRAM is still a strong option. I've always admired the 3060 for its memory at that price, surprisingly capable even now. Also, if you spot a 4070 Ti Super or a 3090 24 gigabytes on sale, they're a great gateway into a hardware with solid performance.
Right, the 12 gigabytes 3060 was always a standout for memory in its bracket.
Exactly. For the mid-range, the new 5080 is shaping up to be a real sweet spot. Strong performance jump over last gen without going top shelf on cost. For high-end personal builds, the 5090 is fantastic. With 32 gigabytes of VRAM, it's going to serve you well for demanding projects and larger models, especially when paired with quantization.
Okay, 5080 for mid, 5090 for high-end personal. What about the professional tier?
If you absolutely need the maximum VRAM on a single card, like 96 gigabytes, or need multi-GPU features such as blower cooling and two-slot design, consider the RTX 6000 Ada only if you find a very good used market price, since its successor is now here. Otherwise, the RTX Pro 6000 Blackwell is the choice. It's the VRAM champion at 96 gigabytes on a single card. But again, prices shift constantly, so weigh current deals and your local market before deciding.
That's a thorough set of recommendations, everything from getting started to professional grade power. So for a quick recap, choosing an NVIDIA GPU for your personal 2025 AI build comes down to a few key points. First, nailing down your VRAM needs. Then, deciding if a multi-GPU setup warrants the Pro line's cooling and form factor perks. And finally, working through the 30, 40, and 50 series landscape to find the right combination of budget and performance.
Exactly. One last thought. When thinking about your next GPU, consider not just today's raw specs, but how AI models and software optimizations are evolving. What enough means will keep changing. Staying informed is as important a tool as the hardware itself. It's an ongoing learning process.
That's a fine note to end on. The learning never stops in AI. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into NVIDIA GPUs. We hope you're walking away with clarity and confidence for your own AI projects. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Hope you enjoyed listening to, well, my voice. If this was useful, hit subscribe and share it with a friend. And there's a little extra for you in the show notes or description.